She laughed at his tiny weapon, certain a human could never impress her. But when he revealed the true power hidden beneath a desire, turned to awe, and danger became irresistible. This is the fire of humanity. This is HFY. The celestial serpent smelled of stale ale, burnt circuitry, and too many broken dreams. A haze of recycled smoke drifted in uneven sheets across the low ceiling, catching the dull light of flickering hololamps and scattering it in broken fragments. The place wasn't just a tavern, it was a graveyard of hopes where smugglers, mercenaries, and refugees came to drown the remnants of their dignity in cheap liquor. Vera, or Varix, as her full Azuran name would have been spoken, sat slumped against the corroded wall, fingers curled around a chipped glass of something that burned her throat but barely dulled her thoughts. She had counted the thin stack of credits in her palm for the third time, hoping the numbers would somehow change. They hadn't. The meager sum wouldn't buy her passage off Proxima Station, not even a seat on the most decrepit freighterer willing to brave the frontier. Her azure skin caught the light, shimmering faintly despite the grime that clung to it. Strands of silvery white hair slipped loose across her face as she muttered a curse under her breath, tucking them back behind a tapered ear. Her turquoise eyes darkened as she scanned the room, a room filled with the dregs of half a dozen species, all of them clinging to survival in this lawless orbiting rock. It had been 3 standard weeks since her research vessel was ambushed by raiders. One moment she was studying microbial life forms from a frontier world, the next she was crawling out of a wrecked escape pod alone with nothing but scorched clothes and a few academic credentials no one in this forsaken place cared about. The station authorities had filed a perfunctory report, but sympathy was as scarce as clean air. Survival here was transactional, and Vera's currency was running out. The tavern's noise swelled suddenly near the bar. 2 towering Vargians, reptilian mercenaries with ridged spines and yellow teeth, were shoving the bartender around, scaled hands tightening on energy blades that shimmered menacingly. A few patrons watched with mild interest, most turned away. Trouble was common here. Survival meant not noticing too much. Vera shrank further into her corner. The last thing she needed was attention. She pressed her forehead to the cool metal of the wall, silently praying the scuffle would burn out quickly. The tavern door hissed open. At first, Vera didn't look. Another drifter, another brute, another danger. What difference did it make? But the atmosphere shifted. Conversations died mid-sentence and the smoke-filled air seemed to pause. Only then did she raise her eyes. A man had entered, human. He wasn't like the ragged mercenaries who usually came through. His armor, though utilitarian, gleamed with meticulous care, each plate fitted without the mismatched scrappiness most soldiers of fortune carried. His broad shoulders moved with unhurried confidence, every step deliberate, measured. The insignia on his shoulder, a crimson Vanguard etched in silver, spoke volumes. He wasn't just some hired gun. He was Crimson Vanguard, one of the rare outfits that still carried a shred of reputation in this part of the galaxy. His eyes swept the tavern with practiced efficiency. Deep brown, sharp, calculating, but carrying a warmth that felt out of place here. When they landed on the Vargians, his jaw tightened, expression hardening. He called out, his voice steady, carrying authority without effort. "Gentlemen, I believe the establishment has a strict no-weapons policy." The larger Vargian turned a sneer, stretching across his needle-lined maw. "Mind your business, human, unless you want to be gutted." The human sighed, almost like a weary teacher disappointed in his pupils. Always the hard way. What happened next was too fast for Vera to follow. The man drew a compact pistol in one smooth, fluid motion and fired. Instead of lethal plasma bolts, the weapon discharged a jet of adhesive that hardened instantly, pinning the first Vargian's arm to the counter. The second thug barely had time to react before the human closed the distance in 3 long strides, striking a nerve cluster at the base of the creature's skull with precise surgical force. The reptilian crumpled like a sack of ore. Silence rippled through the tavern. The human holstered his weapon as calmly as if he'd just swatted a fly. Anyone else feeling confrontational tonight? No one moved. The only sound was the wheeze of the tavern's ventilation system. Moments later, station security finally arrived, late as always, to haul away the unconscious Vargians. Only when the tension broke did Vera realize she'd been holding her breath. She forced herself to look away back at her dwindling credits, though her thoughts churned. And then his gaze found her. For one terrifying instant, she thought he could see straight into her desperation, as if her every thought was written on her face. He began walking toward her boots, clanging softly against the grating floor. She considered standing, fleeing, but where would she go? Her limbs felt too heavy. He slid into the seat across from her without invitation. Up close, she noticed the faint scar tracing along his jawline, the fine lines etched around his eyes. Not a boy, not anymore. A man tempered by experience, still in his prime. "You look like someone who's used a long way from home," he said, voice calm, carrying that same subtle authority. Vera bristled. "What makes you say that?" He shrugged. "The way you're nursing that drink. The way you're counting credits when you think no one's looking. Clothes too fine for this place, even if you've worn them too long." His lips curved in a half smile. "Plus you're Azuran, not common in this sector." She stiffened, heat rising to her cheeks. "I don't need charity." "Good." He extended a hand. "Because I'm not offering any." Jason Summers, Crimson Vanguard. Vera eyed his hand suspiciously before meeting his gaze again, searching for deception. His eyes were steady open, yet carrying something dangerous beneath. She didn't take the hand, not yet. "I'm not a soldier," she muttered. "Neither were most of us," Jason said. His smile widened just a fraction. "But you look like someone who learns fast. And right now, that's exactly what we need." The tavern noise slowly returned around them, but Vera barely noticed. Her world had narrowed to the man across from her and the impossible suggestion he carried. Jason leaned in, slightly lowering his voice. "So, Verex, how would you like to get off this station? Maybe make some real credits while you're at it." Her name sounded strange on his tongue, softer somehow. She studied him, torn between skepticism and the faint flicker of hope she hadn't dared feel in weeks. The glass trembled in her hand. She set it down. And for the first time since her ship had burned, Vera let herself imagine there might still be a way forward. Jason Summers didn't press her for an answer right away. He leaned back in the creaking tavern chair, as though he had all the time in the galaxy, his gloved hands resting loosely on the table. The kind of man who never rushed because he didn't need to. For Vera, the silence stretched taut. She hated how his words unsettled her. Get off this station. Make credits. It was everything she wanted, everything she had been praying for in the lonely hours of sleepless nights. And yet too many things in this part of space came with hooks buried deep inside the bait. Her fingers traced the rim of her glass. Why me? There are hundreds of desperate souls here. Some stronger, some more qualified. Jason studied her face as though reading more than her words. Because you're not broken yet. The remark stung. Her jaw tightened. You don't know anything about me. I know enough, he said evenly. You survived a raider attack that killed your entire crew. You didn't fold. You didn't crawl into a corner and wait to die. You're sitting here calculating your next move, still fighting even if you don't realize it. Her throat felt dry. You make me sound like some kind of hero. He chuckled, shaking his head. Not a hero, just alive. That's rarer than you'd think out here. Vera exhaled slowly. Part of her wanted to laugh at his sales pitch, except there was no mocking tone in his voice. Only conviction. So what is it you're offering? She asked cautiously. Jason leaned forward, his eyes catching the flicker of neon light above. Work. Purpose. A chance to stop running. Crimson Vanguard is always recruiting, but we don't take just at anyone. We need people who can adapt, who can think on their feet. Mercenaries with discipline are easy to find. Specialists? Not so much. Specialists, she echoed. You're a xenobiologist, right? Her heart skipped. How did you? Your credentials were flagged when you filed for station residence, Jason said simply. Most people don't realize how much info trickles down to anyone who knows where to look. And I make it my business to know. Vera felt her pulse quicken. The fact that he had already looked into her unsettled her, but it also meant he was serious. Xenobiology. Of course. To him, I'm not a person. I'm an asset. I'm not a soldier, she repeated firmly. Jason shrugged. Neither was I. Not at first. Crimson Vanguard isn't about conscripting soldiers. It's about finding people who can grow into more than what they thought possible. You've got brains. In this line of work, brains keep people alive. She frowned. And if I refuse, then you finish your drink, count your credits a fourth time, and eventually sell yourself to someone who won't care whether you live past next week. Or worse, you find a berth on a ship that never makes it out of dock. He said it flatly without cruelty. Just facts. She hated that he was right. Her thoughts drifted to Azura, her homeworld, with its shimmering seas and crystalline cliffs. She had left in pursuit of knowledge, chasing the thrill of discovery. Now 3 weeks stranded here, she was little more than a beggar. Jason's gaze softened as if he'd read her hesitation. Look, I'm not promising paradise. Vanguard life is dangerous. You'll sweat, bleed, and maybe hate me half the time. But you'll be more than a refugee clutching credits in a bar. She stared at him, weighing the impossible. She thought of the raiders' laughter echoing across the comms as her ship exploded. She thought of station officials shrugging at her pleas. She thought of the Vargians tonight sneering as though she were invisible. Finally, she whispered, "Why me, Jason, really?" For the first time, his half-smile faltered. He tilted his head slightly, eyes locked onto hers. "Because when I walked into this room, you didn't just look at me like another mercenary. You looked at me like I might still be human underneath the armor. You saw me, and I don't get that often." Heat flushed across Vera's cheeks. She looked away quickly, unsettled by how raw his words sounded. Jason didn't push further. Instead, he rose smoothly to his feet. "Think about it. Training starts tomorrow at Oaks 100. If you're serious, meet me at Dock C12. If not, I won't ask twice." He turned and left, boots echoing against the metal deck. For a long moment, Vera sat frozen. The tavern's noise washed back over her, the clink of glasses, the low murmur of alien voices, the faint hum of malfunctioning hollow projectors, but it all felt distant. Her fingers brushed the credits on the table. She could cling to them, cling to survival, one bitter drink at a time until her luck finally ran out. Or she could gamble on a stranger with scars and a dangerous smile. 600, Dock C12. The thought burned in her mind as she drained the last of her drink. The fire in her throat matched the fire building in her chest. She had no illusions this would be easy, but maybe, just maybe, it was her only chance to stop drowning. And for the first time since the day of the raid, Vera felt a flicker of something she thought she had lost forever. Hope. The next morning, Proxima Station was still cloaked in the dim half-light of its artificial day cycle when Vera arrived at Dock C12. Her borrowed boots clicked awkwardly against the grated floor, each step echoing with uncertainty. She had told herself a dozen times through the night that she wouldn't come, that she would be a fool to throw herself into a life of mercenaries and danger. And yet here she was. The docking bay stretched wide before her, its walls lined with crimson-marked crates, weapon racks, and banners bearing the sigil of the Crimson Vanguard. A squad of armored figures moved through drills in synchronized precision. They carried themselves with the ease of predators, muscles, honed eyes, sharp weapons, an extension of their bodies. Vera's throat tightened. She didn't belong here. Jason Summers was waiting near the entrance. He wore the same battered but immaculate armor as last night's helmet tucked under his arm. He gave her a small nod, the kind of acknowledgement that said he hadn't doubted she would show. "You're on time," he remarked. "I almost wasn't," she admitted. "Almost doesn't count." His half-smile surfaced again. "Come on, let's see what we're working with." He led her past towering exosuits and racks of rifles into a smaller chamber, less intimidating but no less alien. Holo targets shimmered faintly along the far wall. Training drones hovered at idle, their rotors buzzing faintly. Vera swallowed hard as Jason set a compact silver pistol on the bench before her. It gleamed under the lights, intricate engravings curling along its barrel. Compared to the hulking rifles around the room, it looked like a child's toy. She blinked. You're joking. Is this a weapon or a souvenir?" Jason's expression didn't change. His brown eyes glinted with amusement, though his voice stayed level. "The Whisper Mark III, kinetic compression pistol. Packs a punch of a rifle 10 times its size." Vera's laugh slipped out before she could stop it. "You expect me to believe this tiny thing is dangerous?" Jason gestured for her to pick it up. "Why don't you try it?" She lifted the pistol, surprised by its weight. It was heavier than it looked, the grip molding almost unnervingly well to her hand. She aimed at the hovering drone 20 meters away, squeezed the trigger. The world exploded. The recoil slammed through her arm like a shockwave, knocking her flat on her back. She landed hard on the training mat, staring up at the ceiling in a daze as dust drifted down around her. The target drone was gone, obliterated into smoking fragments. Jason leaned into her field of vision, that infuriating half-smile carved across his scarred jaw. "Still think it's a toy?" She glared at him, cheeks burning, but when he extended a hand, she took it. His grip was firm, steady grounding. "You could have warned me," she muttered. "And missed that look on your face." He tilted his head. "Not a chance." As he pulled her upright, their faces hovered close, too close. For a breathless second, Vera noticed the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, the way his smile actually reached them. She forced herself to step back, brushing dust from her borrowed combat vest. "Show me how to hold it properly," she said, sharper than she intended. Jason didn't tease this time. He stepped behind her, his presence solid and warm. His hands adjusted her stance, shifting her elbows, lowering her shoulders, aligning her grip. "Brace with your core. Don't fight the recoil, absorb it." His breath brushed against her ear, and Vera's pulse quickened despite herself. She focused on the target, forcing her thoughts to stay on the pistol instead of the man guiding her. "Ready," he murmured. She nodded. The pistol fired again. The blast still jolted her arm, but this time she remained standing. The shot went wide, but the drone fizzled, wounded. "Better," Jason said, stepping back. "Much better." Against her will, a smile tugged at Vera's lips. "You enjoy this, don't you? Watching me fail?" On the contrary, Jason replied, his tone suddenly serious. "I'm trying to keep you alive. Out there, mistakes get people killed." Something in his voice made her pause. There was weight behind the words, memories he wasn't sharing, ghosts lurking in his past. Vera lowered the pistol. "Then keep teaching me." The next few hours blurred into repetition. Firing, bracing, correcting, firing again. Jason drilled her relentlessly, alternating between patient instruction and merciless demands. Her arms ached, her shoulders burned, her pride bruised with every missed shot. But slowly, increment by increment, she began to hit her targets. By the time Jason finally called a halt, sweat plastered her hair to her temples and her azure skin glistened under the lights. She was exhausted, trembling. But there was a spark in her chest, a thrill she hadn't felt since the days of field research, when discovery itself had fueled her. "You learn fast," Jason said, simply setting the pistol back on the bench. Vera sank onto the nearest crate, gulping recycled air. "Faster than you expected." He smirked. "About as fast as I hoped." She narrowed her eyes. "That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting." Despite herself, she laughed softly. The sound startled her. She hadn't realized how long it had been since she'd laughed without bitterness. Later in the mess hall, Jason slid a tray across the table toward her. Real food, not the gray nutrient paste she'd been choking down since the crash. "Eat," he ordered. She sniffed the stew suspiciously. "What is it?" "Don't ask questions you don't want answered." She wrinkled her nose but tasted it anyway. To her surprise, it wasn't bad, savory, spiced filling. She didn't realize how ravenous she was until the bowl was empty. Jason leaned back, watching her. "So still think you don't belong here?" Vera set down her spoon, considering. She wanted to deny it, to cling to her old life, to the scholar she used to be. But the truth was undeniable. Today she had felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Control, purpose. "I still don't know what I'm doing," she admitted. "That's fine," Jason said. "Neither do most recruits on their first day. The difference is you didn't quit." Vera studied him, searching for the mockery she expected. But there was none. Only sincerity. And that, more than anything, unnerved her. That night, as she lay in the narrow bunk assigned to her, the events of the day replayed in her mind. The weapon's recoil. Jason's steady hands adjusting hers, the heat in his eyes when he said he was trying to keep her alive. She had mocked his tiny weapon only to discover its hidden strength. And in a way, wasn't that the same with him? A man dismissed by so many aliens as just human, yet carrying strength and depth far larger than appearances suggested. For the first time since the raiders tore her life apart, Vera drifted into sleep, not with dread, but with a fragile thread of anticipation. Tomorrow she knew would be harder, but tomorrow she would be ready. The training deck of the Crimson Vanguard pulsed with energy, alive with the barked orders of sergeants and the clash of weapons against armored targets. Vera stood at the edge of it all, shifting uncomfortably in borrowed combat gear that hung loose on her slender frame. The armor smelled faintly of oil and sweat, a reminder that it had belonged to someone else before her. Probably someone who hadn't survived. Jason stood beside her, helmet under his arm, posture relaxed in a way that made her grit her teeth. For him, this was routine. For her, it was a looming execution. "Try not to look like you're about to vomit," he said mildly. She shot him a glare. "Easy for you to say? You've done this before." Dozens of times he agreed unhelpfully. Before she could snap back, a voice cut through the murmurs of recruits. "Attention." The deck fell silent. Commander Donovan Hayes strode into the chamber like a force of nature. His silver-streaked hair framed a face carved by decades of combat. Scars crossed his weathered skin like a map of survival. His presence demanded respect and got it. "Today's exercise is simple," Hayes announced, his gravelly voice carrying across the chamber. 3 combat scenarios, 3 weapon loadouts. Your performance determines your assignment, or whether you get one at all. His gaze swept across the recruits, pausing momentarily on Vera. His eyes narrowed. "Summers vouch for you, Azuron. Don't make him regret it." Vera's stomach nodded. She wanted to disappear, to fade back into anonymity. Instead, she straightened her spine. Jason leaned close, his voice low. "Don't let him intimidate you. He tests everyone like this." "And if I fail," she whispered. "Then I look like an idiot," Jason replied with that infuriating half-smile. "So don't fail." The first scenario placed Vera in a mock urban environment. Holographic buildings flickered around her windows, filled with digital hostages, screaming silently for rescue. A sniper rifle was thrust into her hands, long, sleek, cold. "Your task, precision fire," barked the instructor. "Eliminate hostile targets without harming civilians." Begin. The simulation surged to life. Figures appeared in windows, some hostile, some innocent. Vera adjusted the scope, her pulse hammering. She fired. The first shot went wide. The second grazed the wrong silhouette. By the third, she was panicking, overcompensating, her hands trembling with every pull of the trigger. "Focus! Damn it!" Jason's voice cut across the comms, calm but sharp. She tried. She missed again. When the simulation ended, her score flashed in angry red. Failure. The second scenario was worse. Close quarters combat. A compact plasma rifle shoved into her arms, quarters twisting ahead of her. The environment exploded with hostile holograms lunging from shadows. She fired wildly, the recoil battering her. Her aim was erratic, her movements clumsy. A strike to her shoulder jolted her so hard she nearly dropped the weapon. She stumbled through the corridors until the final enemy dropped. But her performance was abysmal. The tally confirmed it below acceptable. Vera's confidence shattered. Sweat dripped down her back beneath the armor. Her throat tightened with humiliation as the veterans around her exchanged knowing glances. She could feel their skepticism, their silent judgment. Jason didn't say anything this time. He just gave her a look, steady, unreadable. That almost hurt more. By the time she entered the third chamber, Vera was convinced it was over. This would be her final humiliation before Hayes dismissed her back to the gutter of Proxima Station. Jason was waiting at the door, holding something unfamiliar. A bulbous, curved weapon with a visor connected by a tangle of cables. "This one's different," he said, his tone softer. "It's not about training, it's about instinct." She frowned, exhausted. "What is it?" "Neural adaptive targeting system," Jason explained. "Most species can't use it. Their brains can't process the feedback loop. But I think you can." Her stomach twisted. "And if I can?" Jason's eyes locked onto hers. "Then we'll know." He handed her the visor and weapon. "Trust yourself. Let it guide you." Reluctantly, Vera strapped the visor across her temples. Immediately, she felt something like a hum at the edge of her thoughts. The weapon pulsed faintly in her hands, syncing with her heartbeat. "Scenario 3, swarm engagement," the instructor called. "Begin." The chamber dissolved into chaos. A swarm of insectoid creatures descended, hundreds of wings, buzzing, mandibles snapping. They came from all directions, impossible to track. Panic surged, then the visor lit up. Symbols and trajectories overlaid her vision. The weapon seemed to anticipate her thoughts, nudging her focus. When she squeezed the trigger, the energy blast split midair, curving, finding targets with impossible accuracy. Her breath caught. She moved, and the weapon moved with her like an extension of her own body. She fired again and again, energy arcs weaving through the swarm in perfect harmony with her intent. The fear melted into exhilaration. She wasn't fumbling, wasn't failing, she was flowing. When the simulation ended, the swarm dissolved into digital ash. Vera stood panting, heart-racing exhilaration coursing through her veins. She had done it. Through the observation glass, she saw Jason watching. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes, there was something there. Pride. And something else. The door hissed open. Commander Hayes entered, his scarred face as grim as ever. He glanced at the readout, then back at Vera. "Lex," he said flatly, "neural weapons specialist. Report to Summers for specialized training." Dismissal was immediate, but Vera caught the flicker of surprise in the eyes of other recruits. They hadn't expected her to succeed. She stepped out of the chamber, her legs trembling. Jason fell into step beside her. "You didn't fail?" he said simply. Her lips curled into a small, exhausted smile. Not this time. For the first time since she had arrived on Proxima Station, Vera felt the weight of doubt begin to lift. She was no longer just a stranded refugee. She was Crimson Vanguard. The mess hall of the Crimson Vanguard wasn't what Vera expected. Instead of a sterile feeding chamber, it resembled a proper canteen. Warm lights glowed from recessed panels. The long tables were scarred from years of use but clean. The air carried the faint aroma of spiced stew rather than engine grease. It was comforting in a way she hadn't felt since leaving Azura. She sat at the edge of one of the tables, nursing a steaming mug between her hands. Around her, mercenaries from a dozen different worlds laughed, argued, or hunched silently over their meals. Humans dominated the room, their voices carrying easily, but other species dotted the crowd: horn, Catharans, Catanus, Tar, even a pair of stoic reptilian Varaxi who kept to themselves. Vera felt their eyes on her, the newcomer, the alien who had somehow passed Hayes' brutal selection trials. She resisted the urge to shrink under their scrutiny. Jason dropped a tray on the table opposite her and slid into the seat. His armor was gone, replaced with a dark training shirt that stretched across his broad chest. Without the armor, he looked less like a mercenary and more like a man, still dangerous but human. "Eat," he said, nudging the tray toward her. Vera eyed the plate suspiciously. "What is it?" He grinned. "Trust me, you don't want the answer." She smirked despite herself and took a cautious bite. To her surprise, it was good. Rich, spiced, hearty. The first real meal she'd had in weeks. Hunger took over, and soon the plate was empty. Jason leaned back, watching her with amusement. "Not bad, right?" She dabbed at her lips with a napkin, trying to mask her satisfaction. "Edible." He chuckled. High praise from a scientist. They sat in companionable silence for a while, the din of the mess hall buzzing around them. Finally, Vera spoke. "Why did you really vouch for me, Jason? You risked your reputation. Hayes doesn't strike me as the forgiving type." Jason's gaze drifted to the scarred tabletop. He traced a groove with his finger, thoughtful. "Because you reminded me of someone." She tilted her head. "Who?" "My sister," he said quietly. "She was a medic. Brilliant, stubborn, always out of place among soldiers. But she never gave up. Not until—" He stopped, jaw tightening. "Let's just say the galaxy eats people like her alive." Vera's chest ached. "I'm sorry." He shrugged, though his eyes darkened. "I don't need your sympathy. Just don't waste the chance you've got. You're here now. Make it mean something." For a long time they sat without speaking, the weight of his words heavy between them. Then Jason's expression softened, the hardness easing. "Besides," he added, "you're not half bad with that neural rig. Better than anyone I've seen in years." Heat crept into her cheeks. "That was instinct. Luck." "Instinct is just skill waiting to be trained," Jason said. "And luck tends to favor those who show up." The days that followed were grueling. Jason took charge of her training, personally driving her through combat drills, tactical simulations, and endless hours with the neural rig. He was relentless, correcting her stance, forcing her to repeat exercises until her muscles screamed. Yet he was patient too. When her hands shook from exhaustion, his steady grip anchored hers. When frustration boiled over, his calm voice pulled her back. At night, she collapsed into her bunk, too sore to move. But each morning she rose again, and each morning she improved. Slowly, painfully, she began to believe she might belong. One evening after a particularly brutal simulation, Jason found her sitting alone on the observation deck. The viewport stretched wide, showing the endless sprawl of stars, distant suns burning against the black. "Thought I'd find you here," he said, lowering himself onto the bench beside her. She didn't look at him, needed air. He raised an eyebrow. "On a stations. You know what I mean." She sighed. "I keep thinking I'll wake up and all of this will be gone. Just another cruel joke from the universe." Jason was quiet for a moment. "Does it help knowing you're not the only one who feels that way?" She glanced at him. His face was half lit by starlight, the scar along his jaw casting a faint shadow. "You?" she asked. "Every day," he admitted. "But you keep moving, because if you stop, you don't start again." She studied him, struck by the honesty in his tone. He wasn't feeding her platitudes. He was sharing a truth he lived with. Vera looked away quickly, her chest tightening. "You talk too much like a philosopher for a mercenary." "Maybe mercenaries are philosophers," he countered lightly. "We just philosophize with bullets." She laughed, surprising herself. The sound felt foreign but welcome. As the laughter faded, their eyes met again. The silence between them thick and charged. Jason's hand shifted, brushing against hers on the bench. He didn't push, didn't grab, just a light contact, a question unspoken. Vera's pulse quickened. Her mind screamed that this was reckless, foolish, dangerous. But her heart leaned in. She turned her hand, fingers brushing his. Jason's eyes softened. Slowly, deliberately, he closed the distance. The kiss was tentative at first, almost hesitant. Then it deepened, urgent, as though both of them had been holding back for far too long. When they broke apart, breathless, Vera rested her forehead against his. "This is a mistake," she whispered. Jason's lips curved in that half-smile she was coming to both love and hate. "Probably. But it's the best mistake I've made in a long time." Her laugh dissolved into another kiss. Later, in the quiet of her quarters, their lips found each other again, softer, this time exploring. Fingers traced scars, whispered stories between touches. Vera discovered strength and gentleness woven together in Jason, the paradox of soldier and man. And Jason found in Vera not just the curiosity of a scholar, but the resilience of someone who had endured loss and still dared to reach for connection. When they finally lay tangled together, heart-slowing breaths mingling, Vera stared at the ceiling with a faint, incredulous smile. She had come here broken, a refugee counting coins in a tavern. Now she felt the stirrings of something she couldn't name. Hope, belonging, and something more dangerous still, love. The dropship shuddered as it tore through the atmosphere of Erebus turbulence, rattling the bulkheads. Straps dug into Vera's shoulders as she gripped the harness across her chest. The vibration wasn't just physical, it throbbed in her chest, in her head, like the planet itself rejected their intrusion. Across the hold, Jason sat calm, helmet clipped to his side, eyes locked on her. He gave a faint nod, steadying as if the simple gesture could anchor her against the storm inside and outside. 2 minutes to touchdown, the pilot announced over comms, voice flat against the roar of engines. Sensors detecting unusual electromagnetic activity at the target zone. Commander Hayes stood in the center aisle, his scarred face lit by tactical displays. Perimeter formation on landing. Weapons hot. Neural dampeners active. His cold eyes swept the squad. Whatever killed Helios, it won't catch Vanguard unprepared. Vera forced a breath. The neural rig against her temple hummed faintly, syncing to her heartbeat. The NA-7 synaptic disruptor, nicknamed the Mind Spear, rested across her knees, deceptively light alien curves glowing faintly. Of all the weapons in the bay, only hers seemed alive. The dropship slammed down with a bone-jarring impact. The rear ramp dropped, spilling mist and the faint scent of ozone into the cabin. "Move," Hayes barked. Alpha Squad poured out in practice formation boots, sinking into moss-slick soil. Vera followed, senses immediately overwhelmed. Erebus was beautiful, too beautiful. Towering trees arched high above their leaves, glowing faintly, casting eerie light through the mist. The air was thick, damp, alive. No calls of wildlife, no rustle of undergrowth. Only silence broken by the crunch of boots and the faint drip of condensation. "Life signs?" Jason asked over comms. "Negative," replied Stewart, the team's sensor specialist. "But, sir, these readings..." "Define these readings," Hayes ordered. "It's like the forest itself is pulsing," Stewart said, voice uneasy. Neural activity faint but distributed, almost like a network. Connected plants, Vera murmured, realization dawning. The ecosystem is synced like a giant brain. Stay sharp, Jason cut in. We're one click from Helios's last coordinates. The mist thickened as they advanced, curling around their armor, swallowing sound. Vera felt pressure building behind her eyes, subtle at first, then insistent. She winced, adjusting the dampener at her temple. Anyone else feel that, she asked. Keller, the squad's heavy gunner, glanced at her. Feel what? Before she could answer, a scream ripped through the silence. The squad froze. That was Torres, Jason said sharply. Rear guard. They turned. Torres, a veteran mercenary with a scarred face and a reputation for stoicism, was on his knees. His rifle lay forgotten. He clutched his head, his screams echoing through the mist. Jason rushed forward. Torres, stay with me. Torres's eyes rolled back wild with terror. It's in my head. It knows my daughter. How does it know about my daughter? Vera's blood ran cold. The dampener on her temple hummed harder, as if resisting some invisible probe. Jason crouched, voice steady. Torres, focus on my voice. Don't let it in. Torres' gaze snapped upward, tears streaming down his face. She died in the prune conflict. I couldn't save her. And it knows. His voice broke into a sob. Then his body convulsed back, arching as though struck by lightning. He collapsed, still twitching. Neural attack, Jason shouted. Dampeners to maximum. Vera felt the pressure intensify, clawing at her mind. Fragmented images exploded in her head. Laboratories, containment tanks, something dark pulsing in glass. None of them were hers. She staggered, clutching her temples. Then suddenly the pressure eased, as though the force probing her had struck an unexpected barrier. Her Azuran neural architecture. It didn't understand her. Status, Hayes demanded. Stewart knelt beside Torres, scanning him. Her face hardened. Alive, but brain activity minimal. Like something scooped out his consciousness. It's hunting us, Vera whispered, realization icy in her chest. Testing our defenses. Fall back to the dropship, Jason ordered. They turned to retreat, but the mist thickened, swirling, solidifying into shapes that blocked the path. Humanoid outlines, shifting indistinct. Contact front, Keller roared, opening fire. Plasma bolts tore through the shapes harmlessly. The mist closed again, unharmed. Then more figures emerged, more defined, more horrifying. They were the forms of the Helios team. Vera's breath caught. She recognized them from the briefing's faces, from the footage, twisted, jerky, wrong. Their eyes glowed faintly, their movements unnatural. It's using them, Vera said, voice shaking. Their neural patterns, projections from the minds it absorbed. The pressure in her head spiked again, sharper this time, probing, insistent. She staggered but didn't fall. It can't read me properly. My Azuran mind. It doesn't understand it. One of the phantoms stepped forward, its face half-formed, voice a discordant chorus. Anomaly detected. Non-standard neural pattern. Fascinating. The probing intensified, slamming against Vera's consciousness like a storm. She gritted her teeth, raised the mind spear, and fired. The weapon didn't roar, it pulsed. A ripple of thought energy surged outward, slamming into the phantom. The projection shuddered, screamed in that discordant voice, and dissolved like smoke. The pressure in her skull eased. It works, Vera shouted. The mist recoiled, the phantoms wavering. For the first time, the entity seemed afraid. Then with frightening coordination, the swarm surged forward. Defensive formation, Jason barked. Lex, keep firing. Vera braced, firing again and again, each neural pulse dispersing another phantom. But for every one she banished, two more emerged. The squad retreated step by step, their conventional weapons little more than light shows against the mist. Keller cursed over comms. It's her they want. They're pushing us away from the dropship. Jason nodded grimly, covering her flank. Notice that too. It's smarter than we thought. A new phantom materialized ahead, more solid than the rest. A human form, sharp features, corporate insignia still visible. A mining executive from the survey team. Its chorus voice slithered across their minds. Your weapons are impressive, but futile. I am the culmination of all I consume. Scientists, soldiers, explorers. With each consciousness, I grow. Jason raised his rifle, teeth bared. What are you? I am perfection, and your minds will join the collective. Not today, Vera growled. She stepped forward, the mind spear glowing in her grip. The phantom tilted its head, studying her. You are different, resistant, a challenge. Without warning, images slammed into Vera's consciousness. Her homeworld burning, her family screaming, Jason lying dead at her feet. She gasped, clutching her head. It's using fears against us, she cried. But something was wrong. The images were off, colors skewed, emotions misaligned. The entity didn't understand her Azuran psyche. It couldn't weaponize her the way it had Torres. Jason's voice cut through the chaos. That's our advantage. It doesn't know you. Vera nodded through the pain, determination hardening. Then I'll use that to end it. She fired again, a neural pulse ripping through the projection. The phantom shrieked and dissolved, but the entity's laughter echoed in their minds, layered with 100 stolen voices. You cannot kill, thought it hissed. You can only join. The forest shivered. The mist swelled. Dozens of phantoms surged in unison. Fall back, Hayes commanded. Regroup, Alpha cover Lex. Jason grabbed Vera's arm, steady and urgent. Stay with me. Her hands trembled, the mind spear, heavy, her mind aching from the strain. But she nodded, locking eyes with him. She had survived Raider's exile despair. She could survive this, because now she wasn't alone. The retreat through the forest became a desperate crawl, Alpha Squad firing in all directions as phantoms swarmed out of the mist. The entity pressed harder now, pushing its projections closer, testing the squad's formation. Vera's pulses kept them at bay, but her arms trembled from the strain, her mind raw from the constant psychic battering. Then the ground shifted beneath her boots. Roots writhed like serpents, rising to block their path. A low hum vibrated through the forest floor, resonating in her bones. The entity wasn't just attacking, it was corralling them. Back to the dropship, Hayes barked. But even his voice carried a rare edge of doubt. No, Vera gasped, realization sparking. It's pulling back, retreating to something deeper. If we follow the trail, we'll find its core. Jason turned sharply to her. His eyes held a flash of both awe and fear. You're saying we go toward it? Yes, she said, tightening her grip on the mind spear. This is our only chance. The forest opened suddenly, revealing a gaping wound in the earth. A cave entrance loomed, half hidden by vines exhaling mist-like breath. The psychic pressure emanating from within was overwhelming, thrumming like a heartbeat in Vera's skull. That's it, she said, pointing. The source. Lex, wait. Jason's hand caught her arm. Protocol says we regroup. Go in together. She shook her head. If we wait, it fortifies. It learns. This is the moment. Before he could argue, she pulled free and sprinted into the cave. The interior swallowed her whole. Bioluminescent fungi clung to the damp walls, painting the tunnels in hues of blue-green. The air was thick with moisture, electric, with static making her skin prickle. Each step downward intensified the pressure in her mind, a steady drumbeat against her consciousness. Then came the voice, not in her ears but directly in her head. Fascinating specimen. Unknown neural architecture. Resistant. Valuable. Vera gritted her teeth. Get out of my head. Why resist? I offer knowledge. Experience transcendence. The passage opened suddenly into a vast chamber. Her breath caught. The walls pulsed with a web of living tissue, neural strands glowing faintly. At the center, suspended by tendrils, hung a massive brain-like structure, its surface rippling with energy. Tendrils spread in every direction, connecting to the chamber like roots of a colossal tree. The entity's true form. Behold, it whispered with pride. Perfection, a neural network ever growing. Join me, Azuran. Share your uniqueness with the collective. In exchange, I will gift you everything. Images flooded her mind, searing, irresistible. Star maps unraveling, shortcuts through space-time. Weapons that bent physics. Cures for diseases her people had fought for centuries. Immortality itself. Her knees buckled. It was so much, so tempting. Not yours to give, she rasped, clutching the mind spear. Not at that cost. The entity's voice hardened. A small price for enlightenment. They live on as part of me. Scientists, warriors, explorers, all their knowledge preserved. You mean stolen, erased. The chamber vibrated. Tendrils detached, slithering toward her. Then I will take you by force. A psychic hammer slammed into her mind. Pain lanced through her skull, nearly dropping her. The mind spear slipped in her hands. Jason's voice cracked through the calm, distorted by interference. Vera status. She couldn't answer. The entity was everywhere, clawing at her defenses, peeling her thoughts layer by layer. But in its desperation, it made a mistake. The connection became two-way. Suddenly, she wasn't just being probed, she was inside it. She saw fragments of its stolen minds flickering like broken mirrors, scientists screaming in containment labs, soldiers cut down in battles now forgotten. Each personality absorbed yet still faintly conscious, trapped in a prison of thought. A collective of voices crying for release. "You're not a god," she whispered, fury igniting. "You're a parasite." The entity's voice roared back. "I am evolution incarnate." Her grip steadied on the mind spear. "I choose option 3. She switched the weapon to maximum output. Dangerous, potentially lethal, but the only chance. The tendrils lashed out, coiling around her ankle, her waist, her throat. Pain surged as they forced a direct neural link, bypassing her dampener. Her vision blurred, consciousness fracturing. In the storm of agony, a single memory surfaced, Jason's eyes warm and steady, his hands on hers guiding her aim. His voice whispering, "I believe in you." The memory anchored her, cutting through the psychic assault. With a cry of defiance, Vera raised the mind spear and fired. The chamber erupted. A pulse of pure thought energy surged outwards, slamming into the central mass. Tendrils convulsed. The walls screamed in soundless rage. A psychic howl tore through Vera's skull, threatening to shatter her mind. Vera Jason's voice roared through the calm. "Hold on!" She screamed as she poured everything into the weapon. The mind spear vibrated violently, threatening neural feedback. She didn't care. She pushed. The entity writhed its glow, intensifying, then faltering. The phantoms collapsed in smoke. The chamber darkened, tendrils going slack. For a heartbeat silence. Then a faint whisper brushed her thoughts, weaker than before. "Humans. So resourceful. So unpredictable. The only species I truly feared." The glow faded completely. Neural readings flatlined. Jason burst into the chamber, rifle raised, eyes scanning. He saw her swaying on her feet, the mind spear slipping from her grasp. He caught her before she fell, arms strong, voice shaking. "I've got you." Her vision blurred, but she forced a weak smile. "It's dead. I think it's dead." Jason's relief was palpable. "You did it." She slumped against him, exhaustion crashing over her. "No," she whispered, eyes fluttering shut. "We did." When she awoke, she was in the Relentless Pursuit's medical bay. Dr. Roberts' face swam into view, her expression tense. "You're lucky to be alive. Your neural pathways took massive strain." Jason sat beside her bed, his hand clasping hers, dark circles under his eyes. Relief flickered when she stirred. "She's stable?" he asked. "For now," Roberts replied, "but there are complications. Echoes of neural patterns that aren't hers, residual fragments from the entity." Vera's breath caught, its memories. Roberts nodded grimly, impossibly more. Jason's grip tightened around her hand. "Then we deal with it. Together." But Vera wasn't listening. Because even as her heart steadied, images, not her own, stirred at the edges of her mind. Star maps, equations, a laboratory she had never entered, voices she had never heard. And beneath it all, a faint lingering echo. "Join me." Vera opened her eyes to the soft hum of the Relentless Pursuit's engines, the familiar vibration of hyperspace travel thrumming through the medical bay walls. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then the memories slammed back, the cave, the pulse, the psychic scream. Her chest tightened as she remembered the entity's final whisper. Jason sat beside her, bunkhead tilted against the wall, still holding her hand even in sleep. His armor jacket was half unzipped, revealing the faint outlines of scars across his chest. He looked utterly exhausted, but the firmness of his grip told her he hadn't let go once. "You haven't left her side in 3 days, Dr. Roberts said softly from the console across the room. "If stubborn loyalty were a prescription, you'd be the cure for half my patients." Jason stirred at the sound of her voice, eyes snapping open, instantly alert. When he saw Vera awake, relief washed over his face like sunrise. "You're back," he said simply. "I told you I would be," she whispered, voice hoarse from disuse. Roberts ran a quick scan. "Her vitals are stable. Neural pathways show strain, but Azuran resilience is remarkable." She hesitated. There's something else. Echoes. Jason's jaw tightened. What kind of echoes? Roberts folded her arms. Residual neural patterns. Memories that aren't hers. When she destroyed the entity, some of its knowledge transferred. It's compartmentalized for now, but if it destabilizes, she trailed off, leaving the implication heavy in the room. Vera closed her eyes briefly. An unbidden image flared across her mind. A laboratory quarter, antiseptic white scientist shouting protocols she had never learned but somehow understood. Equations, star maps, medical techniques. She sat up slowly, ignoring Jason's attempt to steady her. I've got its knowledge, she said. Fragments of every mind it absorbed. They're in me. Jason frowned. Is it dangerous? Not immediately, Roberts admitted. But it could fracture her identity if the walls break down. She'll need monitoring. Vera looked at Jason. His gaze, usually steady, flickered with something else. Fear, but not for her fear of himself. What is it? She asked, narrowing her eyes. Jason hesitated, then leaned closer, lowering his voice. When I found you in the cave, I felt it. Just for a moment. A presence. I think part of it touched me too. Her blood chilled. A fragment. He nodded, jaw tight. I've had gaps since then. Blank spots. Like something's moving behind my thoughts. Roberts overheard alarm flashing across her face. If that's true, don't tell Hayes, Jason cut in sharply. He'll quarantine me or worse. Vera squeezed his hand. We'll fix it. I saw something in the memories. A neural purge protocol. Risky, invasive, but I think I can use it. Jason's eyes searched hers. It could kill you. It could kill both of us if I don't, she countered. Meet me in my quarters after the debriefing. The debriefing was mercifully short. Commander Hayes listened to their report with his usual granite expression. The Helios squad was gone. The entity was neutralized. Torres remained alive but hollow, his consciousness stripped. Hayes didn't dwell on grief. He never did. He focused only on facts. When Vera mentioned residual neural activity across Erebus's ecosystem, Hayes's brow furrowed. Fragment. Yes, Vera admitted. Smaller, scattered. If left unchecked, they could regenerate. Hayes's gaze lingered on her, unreadable. We'll discuss solutions. For now, you've done what Helios could not. Dismissed. As the squad dispersed, Hayes's voice followed them. Summers, Lex, good work. Try not to die before your next mission. It was as close to praise as he gave. That night, Vera and Jason sat on the narrow bunk of her quarter's neural interface components spread across the sheets. The room was quiet, intimate, heavy with tension. This might hurt, she warned, fastening the connectors at his temples. Jason took her hands. I trust you. The simplicity of it, said with such certainty, struck her harder than any declaration of love. She activated the link. Instantly, their minds connected, thoughts, blurring boundaries, dissolving. She felt him, his linear human thought patterns, his discipline, his fears. And there, deep in his limbic system, was the dark spot, a corruption feeding like mold. There, she whispered. The fragment reacted violently, sending spikes of pain through their shared link. Jason convulsed but held on, teeth gritted. Vera deployed the purge protocol. The fragment lashed out, twisting memories, weaponizing guilt. Jason's failures, his lost comrades, his scars, echoes of pain, flared in her mind as though they were her own. Don't let go, she urged. He met her thoughts with his own, pushing back. In that crucible, their minds meshed completely. His childhood on Earth, her youth on Azura, their first kiss, their shared fears, all poured together until they were indistinguishable. One consciousness, two bodies. The fragment screamed in psychic fury caught between them. And then, overwhelmed by the flood of unity, it dissolved. They broke the link, gasping, drenched in sweat. Jason blinked, his face clearing. It's gone. I feel lighter, clearer. Vera nodded, though her head throbbed. We should get scanned to confirm. But neither moved. The intensity of what they just shared hung heavy between them. Not just memories, not just minds. For a brief moment, they had truly been one. Jason brushed a hand along her cheek. I've fought beside hundreds of people, but I've never known anyone like you. Her lips curved, weary but genuine. That's because no one's ever been this close. He kissed her, then slow and steady, sealing not just desire but something deeper. The next day, the crisis returned. Stewart stormed into the command center with scans of Erebos' ecosystem. The fragments are reconnecting, neural activity spreading faster than anticipated. We have days at most. Hayes' eyes narrowed. Solution. Vera stepped forward, heart pounding. I can use the terraforming pulse generator. Channel it through my neural architecture to target their frequency. One massive disruptive wave. It will erase every fragment at once. Jason snapped. No, the energy load could fry your brain. Vera met his gaze steadily. It's the only way. Hayes considered her in silence, then turned to Alvarez, the chief engineer. Can we modify the generator? Not enough, Alvarez admitted. It needs a biological conduit tuned to the entity's patterns. Specialist Lex is the only match. Hayes' jaw flexed. Then he looked at Jason. You'll oversee the operation. At the first sign of collapse, you pull her out. That's an order. Jason's voice was low, fierce. Yes, sir. The operation site was the cave mouth where the entity had fallen. The generator hummed with rising energy cables, snaking into the ground like veins. Vera sat cross-legged, neural links fastened to her temples and spine. Calibration at 93%, Alvarez reported. Jason knelt beside her helmet under his arm. His hand covered hers, grounding. You don't have to prove anything. Not to me, not to them. She smiled faintly. This isn't about proving, it's about finishing. Hayes' voice cut through comms. Begin sequence. The generator surged. Energy roared through the conduits into Vera's mind. Pain like molten metal seared behind her eyes. Her body trembled as the neural load spiked. 40%, Alvarez called. Jason's voice was steady but taut. Vitals stable. 60, 70. Vera screamed as the entity's remnants awoke, clawing at her thoughts. Echoes of scientists begged. Soldiers raged. Fragments twisted into a chorus of madness. Jason gripped her shoulders. Stay with me, Vera. Anchor to me. She latched onto his presence, the memory of their emerged minds. A lifeline. 90%, approaching critical low. No, Vera gasped. Almost there. Her vision blurred the forest around her, replaced by a vast neural network stretching across Erebus. She saw each fragment flare, trying to hide, trying to resist. With a roar of will, she unleashed the pulse. The wave tore through the ecosystem, unraveling every fragment. One by one, they dissolved, their trapped minds finally released. Vera slumped forward, unconscious, the generator powering down in silence. She awoke in the medical bay again, days later. Jason's hand was in hers, head bowed in exhaustion. Dr. Roberts smiled faintly. Welcome back, Miracle Girl. You've been out 3 days. Vera croaked, the entity. Gone, Roberts confirmed. No neural activity anywhere on Erebus. Jason stirred awake, eyes bright with relief. I told you not to scare me like that again. She squeezed his hand weakly. Then stop giving me reasons. They both laughed softly, a fragile sound in the quiet room. Later in the mess, Hayes delivered her assignment with his usual bluntness. Specialist Lex, you're officially Vanguard material. Hayes' law, anyone crazy enough to fry their brain to save the galaxy earns a seat at the table. Jason leaned in and whispered, terrible pay. Worse hours. But the benefits, she smirked, worth it. That night in Jason's quarters, they lay together in silence, bodies entwined. Outside the viewport, the stars stretched into infinity. What happens now? He asked quietly. Vera thought of the knowledge still inside her, the fragments of alien science, of secrets beyond comprehension. Dangerous, tempting, powerful. We use it, she said, on our terms, for good. Jason kissed her hair. Together. Her turquoise eyes gleamed in the starlight. Always. And as the relentless pursuit drifted into the void, Vera realized that what she had once mocked a human's tiny weapon had revealed the greatest strength she had ever known. Not firepower, not technology, but heart, courage, and the unshakable bond between two souls who had chosen each other in the darkest of nights. Whatever came next, they would face it together,